In the reveal video of my new to me 2014 Yamaha MT-09, it may have come across as though I didn't really like the bike. And that is because at first, I really didn't like the bike. I thought that it was the first bike that I didn't really agree with the stunning reviews that it gets. I have watched and read a lot of reviews on the MT, and for the most part they really like it. They complement its playful character. And when I ride other iconic bikes, for example Super Dukes, R6s and R1s, I instantly agree with the raving reviews that they get. But this one, it just wasn't like that at first. But you can definitely start to get a soft spot for it when you start to see a few of its irregular trademarks. Starting off with this bold and beautiful taillight. I've already remarked on how I love its big and bold statement, but I also love its running lights. Check these out. How just the ends light up. I think it really looks good and it really complements the tail of the bike and the look of the bike. The only thing that ruins it is when you start braking and the whole thing lights up. So I try to avoid braking whenever possible now. I really love the possibilities with modern lights and LEDs. I think it's one of the biggest changes aesthetically in recent years. The thing about naked bikes is that to get them to look good, you have to be really strategic about the shape of the tank. They aren't like super bikes where pretty much every tank is the same shape, just with a few different lines to differentiate them. And there aren't any fairings to take your attention away if you mess this up. This is how they get to look good. Now the grey on this might look pretty dull, but it's still a really nice shape in my opinion. And it also has a fairly similar feel when you're riding it to a motocross bike, so the feel of the tank plays an important role in trying to get grip when braking and accelerating. And it really does feel nice when you're using your knees to brace yourselves. A place where the MT-09 really tries to distinguish its character is with its dash. This funny shaped, small and off-centered dash tells you exactly what bike it is, even from something as simple as a helmet GoPro shot. And despite its size, it gives you a fair bit of information too. The booting up screen is cool the first few times, but every time after that it just takes a bit too long. However, when it is finally booted up, it does reveal a feature so rare on motorcycles that you probably don't even know what it looks like. A fuel gauge. It's necessary because remember that beautiful tank I was going on about? It's exactly that, beautiful. Yamaha forgot its primary use, storing fuel. So you do find yourself at petrol stations very frequently, but if you make new friends there, it's not too bad. And it seems to love this talk of fuel. It also shows you your fuel consumption. But if you just keep pressing the buttons, that scary number does go away. The rev counter is skirting around the edges, but take no notice of that, because by the time you figure out where the revs are within it, it's probably time to change gear anyway because it revs so quickly. And if you are in the market for a nice living room art piece, might I suggest some MT-09 headers? They look like an art piece wandering out of the motor in search of the silencer. Although I do keep thinking that one is missing. I also really like the wheel design. Purely for looking at, not for washing though, because then they are a pain. But I love the flat spokes, I love the color, and I love the ridges that pop up between each spoke. It's not just cars that get nice rim designs anymore, and the best part is that they're not even fake BBS rims. But remember how Yamaha forgot to give you a tank that could store enough fuel? Don't worry, they found a solution so that you don't have to use much fuel. They put a starter button on it with such a bad design that you probably won't even be able to start it. They're trying to be fancy with this all-in-one design, but I don't see what was wrong with the R6's starter button and kill switch separate. It is uncomfortable to try and start it with your thumb. You have to take your hand off of the grip and use a finger like your index finger to start it. Or better yet, to show your appreciation of it, use your middle finger. And lastly, let's just appreciate the attitude that this bike has from this angle. With the steering facing the other way and leaning on its kickstand, you can see that front wheel struggling to stay down, just parked there. So there aren't any amazing aesthetic revelations with this bike, or new technology and full color TFT displays to rave about. But that's what we should be raving about. A pure bike, a good old-fashioned overpowered motor strapped to some wheels, a plank for you to sit on, and oh, why not throw in a set of handlebars to make you think that you can control where it goes. And that is exactly why ABS doesn't fit this platform. After the MT reveal video, I got a fair bit of feedback on this scene. It has better abs than I do. Got rid of that nonsense though on day one by taking the fuse out. It is a piece of technology that is interfering with the pure riding of the bike. The reason that the MT can be so affordable is because they leave off all the expensive but redundant technology. So in order to get ABS onto this bike, it has to be a really crude and bad system. It isn't fancy like KTM's ABS system that considers your lean angle before engaging. It doesn't offer combined braking, and it doesn't have levels that you can adjust to when it kicks in, which means that it just interferes. Also, it doesn't let you use a front stand because the sensor is in the way. The main talking point about this bike is right here, where it says CP3, meaning crossplane 3-cylinder. Now I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar with how Yamaha have been implementing the crossplane crank. In other words, with its funny firing order that I believe is supposed to limit wheel spin. You're probably most familiar with its use in the R1 with its awesome soundtrack, and I've always been hoping that they would implement the crossplane crank into the R6. And while I've been hoping that they do that, they've quietly been slipping it into all of their naked range. So the MT-07 has a CP2, the 2-cylinder with a crossplane crank. And if you had a blind sound test between the MT-09 and the MT-07, you would be sure that the MT-07 is the bigger bike. That thing sounds amazing. And obviously the MT-10 has a variation of the R1's motor with the 4-cylinder. But I have absolutely fallen in love with this motor. It is so smooth and it offers power right from that first rev. It is also very confidence inspiring. And if you read the numbers that this has produced on a dyno, it doesn't even paint half the picture. So you might expect that the reason that I didn't like this bike when I first got it is because of the same flaws that every review that's ever been done of an MT-09 complains about. The twitchy throttle, and my personal favorite, that the rear shock is like a pogo stick. Now this particular bike has been reflashed because of the full system exhaust, which means that the fan comes on at a much lower temperature, which I really like, and that when you switch it on, it defaults to A mode, which I absolutely hate because I have been riding it in standard mode because that is the way that it feels the most like my R6 did, so that way it feels familiar. So every time you switch it on, you have to cycle through the modes to get to it. But as for the suspension, even I can't save that one. And I'm sure that you guys will absolutely agree. This bike definitely takes some getting used to and understanding, but once you do that, you won't be sending it back. And I'm sure that the MT and I will be laughing about how I regretted getting it when I first got it in a few months' time when we're telling other bikes the story. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Please share this video with everyone you know that rides a Honda, and don't forget to ride over that like button.